Hi folks. I had a moment, I had a bunch of videos that I wanted to get out for you guys, so hopefully I'll have the time to put them all out there. This first video is related to a video that Clackclickbang posted not too long ago titled Worst RPGs, as I recall, in which he was referring to some of the worst game sessions for various RPGs that he'd experienced. And that really got me kind of thinking back on some of my worst experiences with RPGs. So I wanted to share some of those because some of those are atrociously, even hilariously bad. But so we'll kick it off. The first really bad gaming experience that I had, or at least that I can really fully recall, because it was that bad, was when I was in high school and we were playing a 2nd edition Dungeons & Dragons game, and everything started off really nicely. Basically, it was a party of about 5 of us, and we started as first level characters. And the GM had decided at that point, before, this was before 3rd edition, so before max hit points was a core rule, but he had house ruled that all of us would start with maximum hit points at 1st level. That quickly escalated into max hit points at every level. So every time we gained a level, we would earn max hit points. And then, and that, okay, well that didn't sound quite so bad, but then once you realized, as the game started progressing, it became more and more power gaming and Monty hauling, and that was basically all it was. We gained a level just about every session. Sometimes I believe there was even one instance where we gained 2 levels in a single session. And we were, by the time we were 6th level characters, we had, minor artifacts, and we were decked out in hundreds of magical items. We had carved out our own little kingdom. We had fought armies. We had pet youngling dragons. Each one of us, we'd found an abandoned nest of dragon eggs, and there were, there was exactly the same number of dragon eggs in the nest as there were players, and it turned out that every egg had a different kind of baby dragon in it. So we got to raise little baby dragons, and I mean, it was just completely obscene. There was no, the DM was basically just, wanting to power game us up. He just was throwing magic items at us. I had 5 of the 6 pieces of a unique set of artifact armor by the time I was 6th level. So it was just pretty ridiculous. Not that there weren't fun moments to the game, and we certainly had our enjoyment in the role-playing, and it was kind of interesting just to see D&D from a completely blitzed out power gamer's perspective, but it didn't really last much longer after that, because there wasn't really much of a point. When you're 6th level and you've got artifacts and a kingdom, where do you go from there? So that was the first kind of weird experience. Second experience I had that was pretty much around the same time was I was introduced in high school to a group of friends who played the Star Wars role-playing game, and they played game sessions during lunchtime. Forgive me if you hear sound effects in the background provided by my son. He's up and playing on his playset. But I was introduced to this Star Wars gaming group, and I decided I wanted to join because I was into the Star Wars RPG. And so I joined in, and they were doing, it was a pretty big group. There was probably anywhere between 8 to 10 players at any given time, plus a GM. And they were taking some rotating GMing duties, so one GM would run a few adventures, and then somebody else would offer to run a few adventures, etc., etc. Well, unfortunately, at the time that I had joined, the GM who was running it, now in Star Wars D6, I mentioned in my review that part of the game mechanics is whenever you roll a skill or an ability, or a test, one of the dice is a special die called a wild die, and it can have really beneficial effects. If you roll a 6 on the wild die, then you can keep rolling it and adding, but if you roll a 1 on the wild die, usually it's up to the GM's discretion based on the situation, but it can introduce minor complications, or it can subtract from your roll, or that sort of thing. But it's intended to be a minor flub or, you know, a quirk of luck. Well, unfortunately, the GM who was running it at the time that I decided to join the game, which we thereafter referred to as the days of the dreaded 1, basically, whenever you rolled a 1 on your wild die, something really bad was going to happen. It could mean, and insofar as it could even mean the death of a PC. Yes, a single roll of a 1 on the wild die, no matter what skill it was an excuse for this GM to find a way to screw your character. There was one particular scenario where we were trying to invade a pirate base, and we were trying to take the stealthy approach, so rather than just storm the front gates, we had found an entrance to their sewer system, and we were planning to sneak in. Well, there's a grating over the entrance to the sewers, and there happens to be a small, there happened to be a small part in the lower part of the grating that had been destroyed, and so we were going to try and climb through it, or underneath it, to get in. Well, it was submerged. It was under the sewage, so we had to swim under in order to get through this hole in the grating. Well, the Wookiee player had decided that he wanted to go first so he could take point and he could protect the rest of us as we made our way in case there was security. Rolls a swimming roll, and voila, rolls a 1 on his wild die. So the GM decides that the Wookiee, being a pretty large, character, tries to swim through this little grating. His fur gets snagged, he gets stuck, and he drowns. He drowns in sewage. In fact, I believe the description went so far as to say that a turd floated into his mouth, he choked on it, and drowned and died, and plugged up the hole so we couldn't use that as a way to get into the pirate base. So yeah, it was pretty bad. It was, that GM didn't run for very much longer after that, thankfully. But I felt so bad for some of these players who had come on pretty recently and probably didn't know any better, thinking that indeed that was the way the game was supposed to be played, that whenever you feared rolling a 1 in your wild die. And it was just pretty atrociously bad. Same group, same roundabout, we were still playing Star Wars. Another GM had stepped up at one point and started running an adventure, and it started off, innocuously enough, and suddenly, our ship was attacked, something happened, coolant was being flushed into the atmosphere inside the ship, and apparently we were all frozen in stasis or something like that. Well, we wake up and we realize that we're on a strange planet, which it turns out is basically was the Forgotten Realms. So we had awakened in the Forgotten Realms. The Jedi, as we were doing a few adventures, we met some dwarves, and we had defended their keep from a dragon, and the GM was describing how the Jedi characters were slowly losing their powers, and he started urging them to take up spell books and learn spells. And about the time that he asked us to roll our strength scores and convert them to hit points and convert our dodge skill to armor class, that was when I gave up on it. So yeah, it was clear that he wasn't interested in running Star Wars so much as using Star Wars as an excuse to run D&D. And the fact that, if he'd come out and said that, if he'd said, hey, I want to run D&D, that would have been a different scenario. But the fact that he tried to sneak us into a D&D game by way of Star Wars, which he knew we all enjoyed, it was kind of bad. So, and a final very interesting and probably the worst gaming story I need a little more time to elaborate on, so I'm going to do a second part to this, but it involves mutants and masterminds, and a player, one of the only times I've ever witnessed a player single-handedly destroy an entire campaign within the span of one session. So I will be right back with that.